Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Joshua, and if you'd asked me 5 years ago who I was, I'd have said, the future of our family empire. The man trusted with a legacy. The one who never let anyone down. But that night at Thanksgiving, it changed everything. I was 35, sitting at the long walnut dining table inside my family's neoclassical mansion outside Boston. The kind of place that smells like old money and quiet control. My father, Charles Kensington, sat at the head of the table with his usual unreadable expression, flanked by his gold-rimmed wine glass and the day's Wall Street Journal. My mother, Evelyn, was fussing over the turkey, smiling like nothing in the world could go wrong. And me? I was still in my blazer, fresh off a flight from Zurich, where I just closed a deal that would increase our company's European market share by 30%. I was the chief operating officer of Kensington Organics, a multi-million-dollar organic food empire started by my grandfather, expanded by my father, and, at least I thought, perfected by me. I'd given everything to it. No vacations, no marriage, no children. Just boardrooms, endless travel, 3 a.m. crisis calls, and signing NDAs thicker than novels. But it didn't matter. Because I believed I was building something for my family's future, my future. Then my younger brother, Damien, lifted his champagne glass and grinned that smug, hollow smile. "Dad, it's time, right?" he said, laughing. My father's eyes glinted. "Yes, son. It's time." Everyone hushed. Glasses clinked. Forks paused mid-air. I turned toward my father, expecting what had been promised for years, the announcement that I would be stepping into the role of CEO. But he didn't look at me. Instead, he raised his glass toward Damien. "I've decided to step down as CEO. And I'm proud to announce that Damien will take over the family business." Silence. Then one awkward cough. Then clapping. Damien smirked like a frat boy handed the keys to a Ferrari. My stomach dropped. My mother looked down, her napkin twisted in her lap. No one looked at me. "Dad?" I said, barely able to hear my own voice. He didn't meet my eyes. "It's final, Joshua. Don't make this about you." About me? I'd burned myself out for this company. I built its logistics operations, opened our first international branches, led the digitization that saved us millions. Damien? He barely graduated. Never held a role longer than 6 months. The last time I saw him in an office, he was trying to expense bottle service from a club in Ibiza. And now he was CEO. I stood up, my chair scraping against the marble floor. "You said I would lead this company one day." Charles didn't flinch. "Things change." That was it. I left the table without another word, the sounds of forced laughter trailing behind me like smoke. I paced the massive entryway, chest heaving, heart pounding. My mother followed me a few minutes later, her face pale. "Joshua, please don't cause a scene. It's been decided." "Why, Mom?" I snapped. "Why him?" Her eyes filled with tears. "There are things you don't understand." "What things?" She hesitated. Then said the sentence that broke my world apart, "Ask your father." When I did, he didn't blink. "Because you're not my son, Joshua." When my father said, "You're not my son," it felt like someone had pulled the earth out from under me. I stood there, in the grand hallway I used to race through as a child, staring at a man who I had sacrificed my entire life to impress. My mouth was open, but no sound came out. Just the echo of that sentence. "You're not my son, Joshua." He didn't say it with cruelty. He didn't yell it. But that made it worse. It was cold. Like a business transaction. A memo sent too late. "You're lying," I said, my voice barely audible. He adjusted his cufflinks, as if this conversation bored him. I always suspected. You don't have my eyes. Your personality, too rigid. Too calculated. Your mother admitted it to me when you were 15. You were the product of a mistake. I wanted to hit him. I clenched my fists, blood rushing to my head. But I didn't. I turned and walked. My mother was in the foyer, wringing her hands like a guilty maid. I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see my mother, I saw a stranger who'd been lying to me for 35 years. Tell me it's not true, I whispered. Tears welled in her eyes. Joshua, you are my son. In every way that matters. But not in the way that counted to him, I said. Not when it came to the company. Not when it came to blood. She reached for me, but I pulled away. I gave up everything for this family, I said. For his name. And you let me believe I was his son. It wasn't supposed to matter, she sobbed. He promised it wouldn't. And now Damien's CEO. I didn't wait for her to answer. I grabbed my coat and walked out into the frigid Boston night. Snow had started falling, lightly dusting the marble steps as I walked toward my car. That night, I didn't go back to my penthouse. I drove until the city lights faded and the road stretched into emptiness. I ended up at a rest stop off Route 2, sitting alone in my car, staring out into darkness. I cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just silent, devastating tears. For the time I gave up. For the years I sacrificed. For the man I called Dad. For the company I bled for. It was like mourning a death, only the person who died was me. I didn't answer any calls. I didn't check emails. I stayed away for 3 days, holed up in a tiny motel, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above my bed. On the third morning, I got a text from the company's CFO. Transition meeting today at noon. Damien wants your operations report on his desk. I stared at it. A wave of humiliation washed over me. No apology. No explanation. Just a demotion to a glorified assistant. I took a shower, shaved, put on a suit, and drove back to the office. But not to stay. When I walked into the boardroom, Damien was sitting at the head of the table, feet up, sipping a cold brew. He didn't even look up. Glad you could make it, bro, he said. You've got the last 10 years of data, right? I wanna revamp things. Make this place less stiff. I placed a manila envelope on the table. What's this? He asked. My resignation. He blinked, clearly not expecting it. You serious? I was COO. You turned me into a glorified spreadsheet monkey overnight. I'm not here to babysit your incompetence. He smirked. You're pissed because Dad picked blood. No, I said. I'm pissed because he used me. And you don't even know what you've been handed. I turned to leave. Damien called after me, you'll regret this, Josh. This company is our family. I stopped in the doorway. No. It was my prison. And I walked out. After I walked out of that boardroom for the last time, I didn't know who I was anymore. I wasn't the COO of Kensington Organics. I wasn't Charles Kensington's son. I wasn't even part of the family, according to him. So who the hell was I? For the first time in 35 years, I had no title, no plan, no identity tethered to a legacy. I moved out of my Boston penthouse the following week. Sold it to a tech couple from Cambridge for $1.2 million. I told the realtor to deposit every cent into a clean, new account under my birth name, Joshua Bennett. No Kensington. No lie. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I needed space. And silence. I found both in a little place called Emerson Ridge, population, 1,200. A 2-stoplight town in Vermont, with more cows than people and an honest kind of stillness that reminded me how exhausted my soul had become. I rented a small cabin near a frozen lake. It had a fireplace, no TV, and the kind of peace that scared me at first. But in that silence, I started digging, not just into my past, but into theirs. I wanted to know everything Charles never told me. Why he let me believe I was his son. Why he used me like a workhorse and discarded me like trash the moment Damien came knocking. That's when I made a discovery that changed everything. It started with a name. My real father. The man my mother had once whispered about in a moment of broken guilt, years ago during a quiet Christmas night when Charles was working late and she had too much wine. He was kind, she had said, her voice soft. He had nothing but dreams and a camera, not money. Not ambition. Just heart. A name. Samuel Bennett. A photographer. A nobody, according to Charles. A mistake, according to family whispers. But I needed to know who he really was. If I wasn't a Kensington, then maybe I could finally understand who I truly was by learning about him. So I searched. And what I found shocked me. Samuel Bennett wasn't a failure. He was an artist. A war photographer turned documentary filmmaker. His name came up in awards I had never bothered to care about, Emmy nominations, Sundance screenings, humanitarian grants. He had built something too, not in stock portfolios or quarterly reports, but in truth. More than that. I found out he had died in Syria, covering a story about child refugees. A mortar hit his convoy. He never made it home. He died a hero. Quietly. Unknown to me, his only son. I found a photo of him online. He looked, like me. Same chin. Same eyes. Same quiet intensity I'd always been told I got from Grandfather Kensington. Lies. It was him. All along. My hands trembled. I'd grown up thinking I had to earn my place. That I had to fight to belong. And here I was, the son of a man who had risked everything to tell the truth to the world. That night, I stood out on the frozen lake, the stars scattered like spilled diamonds across the sky, and I cried. Not because I was angry anymore, but because I was proud. I wasn't a Kensington. I was something better. But the discovery didn't end there. Because as I went deeper into Samuel's life, into the people he knew, the circles he worked in, I stumbled onto a digital archive he had submitted before his final trip. Among his private documents was a scanned legal letter, unsigned, never sent, from Evelyn Kensington to Samuel Bennett. It was dated 1989. It read, "Sam. If anything happens to me, know this. Joshua is yours. He always has been. Charles knows. He had a test done without my consent. But he kept it quiet, because Joshua is brilliant. He's always wanted a perfect heir. He'll use him until he doesn't need him anymore. I'm staying for Joshua's sake, but the day Charles discards him, I will leave with him. If I never get the chance, please find a way to protect our son." I dropped the laptop. My knees hit the floor. My mother had known. She knew what Charles was. And somewhere deep inside, she tried to protect me. But she never got the chance. Charles used me knowing I wasn't his. And he did it because I wasn't his. Because it meant I owed him. And that's exactly what he wanted. Debt. Obedience. Control. He had turned me into a tool. A ghost in a suit. And when he had Damien, the golden bloodline, ready to take over, he threw me aside. But that was his mistake. Because now I wasn't bound by his rules. I wasn't trying to earn his love. I wasn't looking for his approval. I was free. And it was time I stopped mourning and started planning. Something shifted in me after reading that letter. I no longer felt powerless. For the first time in my life, I realized I'd been chasing the wrong thing, a place in someone else's story. Charles Kensington's story. A man who only valued blood and obedience. A man who looked me in the eyes, smiled, and said I wasn't his, only after draining a decade of brilliance from me like a parasite. I spent another week in that Vermont cabin, nursing coffee and scribbling on legal pads. Not to write poetry or journal my pain, but to build a blueprint. Revenge, if it was going to be worth anything, couldn't just be emotional. It had to be surgical. I wasn't going to throw a tantrum. I was going to dismantle an empire. Piece by piece. Kensington Organics was expanding into international markets. I knew the contracts. The suppliers. The weaknesses. I'd built the entire operational foundation myself. And more importantly, I knew the lies Charles and Damien had buried under the PR smiles. So I started collecting. I called in favors from international contacts I'd developed through trade expos, food tech forums, and negotiation tables in Berlin and Sao Paulo. Quietly. Carefully. Hey, this is Josh. Just wondering, how's Kensington's delivery performance been since I left? Some laughed. Others sighed. Many were pissed. They told me horror stories, about missed deliveries, pricing irregularities, broken NDAs, even whispers of supply chain fraud. Apparently, Damien thought he could run an international logistics network like a college keg party. And Charles was too proud to admit the company was slowly hemorrhaging credibility. I created a secure Dropbox folder and started storing every complaint, every audit slip, every quiet confession from suppliers too afraid to go public. My document folder was a time bomb. Then came phase 2. If I was going to destroy the Kensington brand, I needed a better brand to rise from the ashes. And for that, I needed a team. That's when I remembered Eliana Tran. We met at an agricultural tech summit 3 years ago. She was a brilliant Vietnamese-American sustainability engineer, and she'd once pitched me an idea for a low-impact, scalable organic food model using hydroponics and blockchain traceability. It was bold. Ethical. But Charles shot her down instantly. Too bleeding heart, he said. I emailed her. She replied in 5 minutes. 2 days later, we were video conferencing. I told her the truth, about everything. My fall from the Kensington family. The betrayal. The exile. And what I wanted to build. She stared into the camera and said 2 words that lit a fire in my chest. I'm in. Within a week, we had a name, Betrayal Foods. A fusion of vital and real. The opposite of the Kensington brand. Transparent. Accessible. Disruptive. We began building in silence. A stealth mode startup with no social media, no press releases, just vision. Eliana brought in 2 other experts, Mateo, a brilliant Puerto Rican software architect who could build traceability systems that would make Whole Foods look archaic, and Jules, a grassroots marketing prodigy from Atlanta who had turned farmers markets into media sensations. I was the strategist. The architect. The man with the knife behind the curtain. Together, we worked out of a modest warehouse in upstate New York, converting it into a fully functional hydroponic farm with proprietary tech, local community incentives, and a distribution model that could scale nationwide within 18 months. All funded by the $1.2 million from my penthouse sale, and the war chest I'd slowly built from anonymous private investors. But the final blow? That would come from the inside. One night, I got a message from an old colleague, Renee Parker, Kensington's former director of compliance. She'd left 6 months after I did, citing personal reasons. But now I knew why. I couldn't work for Damien, her message read. And Charles has lost his mind. I heard you're building something. I want in. I also have something you'll want to see. The attachment nearly made my heart stop. It was a scanned copy of a contract signed between Kensington Organics and a third-party distributor in Argentina. The problem? It was backdated. Illegally. Charles had altered import-export documents to inflate quarterly earnings before their IPO pitch. It was fraud. And it was on paper. Signed. I asked her, "Why are you giving this to me?" Her reply: "Because you're the only one who ever cared about doing things the right way. And it's time someone took Charles down." With that, I had everything I needed. A new brand rising from the ground up. A loyal team that believed in real change. A portfolio of damning evidence against Kensington Organics. And a plan that would shake the empire that had discarded me to its core. All I had to do now was pull the trigger. Revenge isn't a lightning strike. It's erosion, silent, slow, inevitable. And the cracks in Kensington Organics began to show the moment I launched Betrayal Foods. It started small. A quiet article in a niche sustainability blog, profiling our revolutionary hydroponic system and blockchain food tracking. We didn't mention Kensington. We didn't have to. The contrast was obvious to anyone in the industry. Where was this 5 years ago? One commenter asked. Why are we still buying from the dinosaurs? The article went viral. By the end of the week, Betrayal's inbox was flooded with inquiries, small grocers, restaurants, co-ops, even a few national distributors. People were hungry for transparency. And Charles? He was still trying to market Damien as the young, bold face of organic leadership. Except Damien was too busy snorting coke in Mykonos to notice the sharks circling. 3 months later, we launched Betrayal's first flagship product line, microfarmed greens with full origin data traceable via QR code. Customers could scan their lettuce and see the farm location, growing conditions, harvest time, even the name of the technician who packed it. It was science fiction level precision in an industry where most CEOs still use spreadsheets from 2010. Jules led the marketing blitz. Her strategy: expose the gap without naming names. Let the public draw their own conclusions. She created side-by-side comparison ads, Betrayal's traceable spinach next to Brand X mystery greens. No names. Just facts. Results? Explosive. One ad read: Your salad shouldn't have secrets. We tell you the truth. Even if it's ugly. The Brand X was clearly Kensington Organics. And everyone knew it. Charles's company began hemorrhaging partnerships. First it was the Good Table, a farm-to-table chain on the West Coast. Then Green Basket Co-op dropped them, citing lack of transparency and inconsistency. By the time Kensington's quarterly report came out, it was ugly. Revenue was down 27%. Logistics costs up. Damien missed 3 investor meetings in a row. But I wasn't done. I took the next step. I leaked the Argentina document. Quietly. An anonymous tip to a food industry watchdog site. I made sure the scan showed the forged signature clearly, the altered dates, the intent to mislead investors. The site published the exposé under the headline: Rotten Roots, Kensington Organics accused of falsifying international trade docs ahead of IPO. The stock froze. The board panicked. Charles's lawyers issued denials within hours. Too late. By the next day, Kensington was under federal investigation for securities fraud. The man who once told me I wasn't worthy to inherit his company was now watching it burn, under the weight of the very foundation I had helped build. But the real twist? That came during a live-streamed panel I was invited to speak on, the future of ethical food. I almost declined. I don't enjoy attention. But Jules insisted. This is your moment, Josh. They tried to erase you. Now take the mic. So I sat on that stage, across from executives from billion-dollar companies, and when the moderator asked me what set Betrayal apart, I said, We're not just here to feed people. We're here to tell the truth. Even when it costs us. Because I've seen what happens when companies lie to protect the few at the expense of the many. I helped build that system once. I'll spend the rest of my life tearing it down. The clip went viral. 1.2 million views in 4 days. And that night, I got an email. Subject line, "We need to talk." It was from Damien. "Josh, we're screwed. The board wants to remove us. Dad's losing it. I know you hate me. But I need your help. We need your help." And there it was. The empire that cast me out was now begging me to save it. But I wasn't finished yet. Not until Charles himself came calling. I knew it would come eventually. The call. But I didn't expect it to be that voice. That tone. That man. It was 6:42 a.m. I was sipping black coffee in my cabin office, reviewing Q3 figures. Betrayal had just secured a $12 million contract with a national chain. We were scaling into Canada next quarter. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Boston. I answered, expecting a supplier or journalist. Instead, I heard the voice of the man who broke me. Joshua. It was Charles. Not Dad. Not Father. Just Charles. I didn't speak. I wanted to see where he would go. He took the silence as an invitation. "I imagine you've seen the news." I leaned back in my chair, watching the snowfall outside. "You mean the federal investigation or the investor exodus?" Silence. Then a dry laugh. "Both, I suppose. What do you want?" He sighed. "I won't pretend I didn't make mistakes. I was proud. Angry. But Kensington Organics is still a family business. And despite everything, I need you." There it was. The man who once said I wasn't worthy, was now asking for rescue. "Funny," I said. "You called me a tool. A mistake." "I said things in anger," he replied. "But the truth is, no one understands this company like you. Damien can't lead. The board's preparing to remove us both. You should let them. I'm offering you the CEO position." I nearly dropped my mug. He continued, voice tight. "The company's bleeding. But if you come back, we can rebuild. I'll step aside. Clean slate." I let that hang in the air. Then I said, "Why now? Why me?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because despite what I said, I know what you built. I watched it. Every deal. Every contract. It was always you. Not me. Not Damien. You are Kensington Organics." "No," I said. "I'm not. I was never a Kensington. You made sure I knew that." "I was wrong," he said. But something about his tone. It didn't sound like remorse. It sounded like desperation. And then, something clicked in my mind. I opened my laptop, pulled up our internal analytics. Betrayal had received a $3.5 million investment from a venture group just 3 weeks ago, Holland West Capital. Except that group was a shell. A legal holding company under a trust, linked to Margaret Kensington. My mother. She'd passed 6 months ago. I hadn't gone to the funeral. I couldn't. The pain was still too raw. But that meant. I called Eliana immediately. Run a trace on Holland West Capital. Now. An hour later, I had the truth. My mother had quietly liquidated her personal assets, stocks, bonds, real estate, and funneled them into Betrayal. She believed in me. She chose me, even after I walked away. While Charles and Damien were feeding investors lies, my mother, who had stayed silent for years, had slipped behind the scenes to invest in me. And that changed everything. Because it meant Betrayal's success was not just mine. It was hers. Her legacy. Her redemption. I called Charles back. "You want me to return?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "We'll go public with you as the new CEO. Rebuild trust." "And Damien?" "He'll step aside. We'll restructure." I smiled. And then I said, "No." There was silence. "Then, you'll let this company collapse?" "No," I replied. "I'm going to buy it." He scoffed. "With what money?" "With the funds your wife gave me," I said calmly. "The same woman you betrayed. The same woman who watched me become what you never deserved." He didn't respond. So I continued. "I've already partnered with your creditors. Your board. Your former suppliers. I'm not returning to Kensington, I'm acquiring it. Piece by piece. And when it's mine, I'm going to dissolve it. You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I would," I said. "And I'll do it under my real name, Joshua Bennett. The son of a man you tried to erase. The man my mother never stopped loving." His voice broke slightly. "Joshua, please." But it was too late. The power had shifted. And this time, it wasn't blood that determined legacy, it was character. They say revenge is best served cold. But when it finally came, mine didn't feel cold at all. It felt clean. Like the first deep breath after a storm. 6 months after that call with Charles, I stood in the boardroom of what used to be the heart of Kensington Organics. The walls were still lined with oil paintings of patriarchs who thought they built something immortal. Their eyes stared down at me like ghosts clinging to the lie of legacy. But I didn't flinch. I had just signed the final acquisition documents. Betrayal Foods had officially absorbed Kensington's remaining assets after the company's collapse under federal investigation, investor walkouts, and massive fines for falsified reporting. Their patents. Their warehouses. Their tarnished name. All mine. Charles had vanished from public view, reportedly living alone in his Cape Cod estate, estranged from everyone, including Damien, who had fled the country mid-scandal after blowing through the last of his trust fund. And me? I stood at the same walnut boardroom table where I'd once been humiliated, now as owner. But I didn't stay. I didn't want to run Kensington. I wanted to bury it. 3 weeks later, I liquidated all the intellectual property that still held value, donated the proceeds, over $11 million, to grassroots food justice initiatives across the country. I funded scholarships in my real father's name, the Samuel Bennett Fellowship for Ethical Journalism, to support young truth-seekers like him. Then I dissolved Kensington Organics. Legally. Permanently. It no longer exists. The man who said I wasn't his son, who said I wasn't blood, who said I wasn't worthy, I erased his empire, not with fire or fury, but with finality. And in its place, something better rose. Betrayal Foods expanded nationwide. Our hydroponic technology was licensed to schools, prisons, and shelters, places forgotten by big agriculture. Our transparency model became the industry standard. And the story? The story went global. They called it a corporate coup. They called me a disruptor. But I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was just a man who'd finally stopped begging to belong, and started building something real. My personal life followed suit. A year after the acquisition, I married Eliana. We'd built Betrayal together, but more than that, she helped me rebuild myself. We now live just outside Ithaca, in a modest house surrounded by forest and wildflowers. On weekends, I teach business ethics at a local college. We have a daughter now. Her name is Margaret Elia Bennett. She has her grandmother's eyes and her mother's fire. And one day, when she's old enough, I'll tell her everything. Not just about what was taken from me, but what I chose to become. Because legacy isn't about blood. Or names carved into wood-paneled offices. It's about character, choice, and what you do when the truth shatters everything you thought you were. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.